When I was about 10 years old, I lived in the city, not too far from a McDonald's. I remember one day I convinced my mom to let me go there alone to get some food. She was busy with something and gave me a few dollars and told me I'd come back quickly. I was excited. It made me feel like a grown-up to go out on my own. I had done it several times before, and it wasn't a daily thing, but here and there I would. So I left, and I made my way to the McDonald's. It took me about 10 minutes to walk there. After leaving our house, I only had to walk to the end of the street, then cross a busy one. Then I went down a ways before the McDonald's was on the right side. As I approached the restaurant, a sudden urge to use the bathroom hit me. When I got inside, I saw that the place wasn't very busy, and I walked over to the bathrooms to use it before ordering. When I got inside the bathroom, nobody else was in there. I went into a stall, but only about a minute later, I heard the bathroom door open and close. This was followed by footsteps. But the footsteps didn't go in far. They seemed to stop just inside the door, and I thought this was kind of weird. I kept expecting them to walk further in, but they didn't. After about a minute, I ducked down and looked underneath the bathroom stall that I was in. I saw black shoes and the bottom of some black pants. They were standing right in front of the door. I wanted to leave, but I would have to walk past the person, so I decided to wait. As I sat in the bathroom stall, I couldn't believe how or why this person was standing there for so long. I decided that I was going to stay in the bathroom stall until they left. Eventually, after probably 10 more minutes, I heard the door open and the person walk out. I felt much better. The whole thing seemed really strange to me. Finally, I was able to leave the bathroom stall. And after I walked down to the bathroom, I looked around the restaurant. There still weren't very many people in there. However, not long after leaving the restrooms, as I was making my way over to order, I saw one man who was sitting in the corner of the restaurant. I noticed his black shoes and pants, and I realized this was more than likely the same guy. I hurried out and went to the counter to order, and I did not see the man as I did. After ordering, it didn't take long at all for me to get my food, and I then left the restaurant to walk home. I began making my way back along the sidewalk, but before making it more than 2 minutes, I had a bad feeling. I looked back, and sure enough, the same guy was trailing me. He was a little ways back, and now right up on me, but it still made me really nervous. Could he be following me? This was the same man who had just been standing inside the bathroom door for so long. I kept looking back every so often, and the man was always behind me. When I started walking faster intentionally, the guy definitely did the same thing. I was now getting really worried. What if this guy followed me all the way back to my house? And what if he ran up behind me and tried to grab me or something before I could get home? As I approached the busy street to wait at the crosswalk before crossing, I had to stop. The man would probably catch up to me before I would make it across the street. That's when I decided to just go for it. I started sprinting across the road, with many cars still on it. I felt confident that I could make it and would not be hit by a car, but nevertheless, multiple cars honked at me as I ran. But luckily, I did make it across safely. I looked back and saw the man starting to run out into the street as well, but a car quickly approached and honked at him. He backed up and stayed on the other side. I used this opportunity to run up into my street and out of sight of the man. I ran the whole rest of the way home and made it back a short time later. After making it home, I told my mom all about the experience. And as a result, I was not allowed to go anywhere on my own for a while. But I didn't mind a bit. I was worried that the man would have somehow found out where we lived, and I worried about that for weeks. But luckily, I don't believe he did, because I never saw him again after that. I used to work at a McDonald's. I worked there for about a year, right after I finished high school. Working at McDonald's was a decent job for me. I made a few friends with coworkers, and I didn't love the job, but I didn't hate it either. Mostly, I would work behind the counter taking orders or passing out food to customers. One busy Saturday, I found myself working a shift, starting in the morning and ending in the afternoon. For basically the entire time, it was really busy. Our location would always get tons of customers, and it was really close to a shopping center. With it being the weekend, that also drew many people in. Time sort of flew by that day, as we all scrambled to keep up. There were quite a few of us working, and I remember at one point, probably about 1 p.m., the place was really crowded. I got an order to hand out to a customer, and I called the number. A woman walked up and accepted it, then walked away, only to return about a minute later. When she did, she was extremely upset. She sought me out and told me that this was not her order. She then angrily demanded her real order. I asked her for her order number, and when she told it to me, I realized that she had grabbed the wrong one. The number that I had called was different. This was her mistake. I told her that her order would be out soon, but she then demanded a refund and said that it should be free. That's when I tried explaining the whole situation to her. It ended up being a total disaster. The place was loud and the woman would not listen to my explanation. It's like she could not accept the fact that she had made the mistake. Honestly, it made me really frustrated, but I kept my cool. Eventually, I called over a manager to help resolve this situation, and I remember the woman specifically reading my name off my name tag and telling it to my manager as if I should get in trouble for this. I just kind of stood there. My manager then told me that she would handle the situation and I could go back to work helping the others. The woman was raising her voice and sort of causing a scene. Just about everybody else in earshot was looking over and staring. At last, after maybe 10 minutes, the woman ended up taking her order and finally leaving. I did my best to forget about it and continue with my work. I helped other customers like normal for about 15 more minutes. Then it was time for my break. During that time when I worked there, I liked to take my breaks in my car. It was quiet and peaceful, away from the busy McDonald's. I would just sit in there and go on my phone or whatever. Then I would go back inside to work. So on this day, I walked out and left the restaurant and headed my car in the parking lot. Almost immediately, though, after leaving the building, I saw the same woman who had put up such a fuss. She was sitting at one of the outside tables. Instantly, our eyes locked for a moment before I couldn't help but look away from her. This was really awkward, and I decided to just ignore it and keep walking out to my car. As I passed her by, I cringed as I couldn't help but notice that she was getting up. She didn't say anything, but I could sense her start to walk behind me. I walked out to my car, and when I reached it, unlocked it and got inside. I refused to entertain the woman following me, but when I was inside my car and in the driver's seat, I noticed that she had walked right up to my driver's window. She then knocked on the window, and I heard her start speaking. I quickly hit lock before she surprisingly tried opening my driver's door. After it wouldn't open, she then knocked on my window. I heard her talking, and she still seemed really angry. I began rolling down my window, curious of what she wanted to say to me. But as soon as I rolled it down, she reached inside for me. I heard her say, "Hey," to me, as I started rolling the window back up the instant that she reached in. I felt in danger and decided to back out and just leave. The woman stood there, shouting at me as I drove my car out of the parking lot and left. I knew that I couldn't go home because I had to return within 15 minutes, because that was how long my break was. I drove around a little and called my boss, letting her know of the situation that just happened. My boss had told me that she was aware of the situation in the parking lot and told me that she was glad I was okay. I said I would be back within the 15 minutes, and I kept my word. When I returned to the McDonald's parking lot, though, it was quite the scene that I was not expecting. There were multiple police cars and flashing lights. I parked and went back inside to learn of what had happened. A few police officers stood around, one talking with our manager. Apparently, after the woman had yelled at me in the parking lot, another employee went outside to try to calm her down. There was another shouting match, and a customer ended up calling the police. The woman got arrested for disorderly conduct and attempted assault after she apparently tried punching one of the other employees. All I have to say is that she must have had anger problems or something like that, because I couldn't believe what happened. I've seen some crazy customers in my days working at McDonald's, but none will ever top this woman. I was 7 years old. I went to McDonald's one sunny afternoon with my mom and a little sister. The first thing that I remember about it is how busy it was. The place was packed. People were everywhere. I remember that shortly after going inside, I saw the Happy Meal toys in a case and I stopped to look at them. I always liked seeing all the possible options of toys that I could get in the Happy Meal. I wanted to collect them all. When I looked back up, though, maybe a minute later, my mom and sister were gone. I thought they had still been standing there right near me. I looked around the crowded restaurant. People were everywhere, but none of the people that I saw were my mom or sister. As I was standing there looking around, about a minute went by, and then a woman approached me. I had never seen her before in my life, but she seemed like she somehow knew who I was. I looked up at her when she was right in front of me. She said that my mom was looking for me. The way that she said it was kind of stern, like I was in trouble. I was afraid that I might actually be in trouble because my mom had always told me to stay by her when we were out in public. The woman that told me to come on and started walking. She grabbed my hand and I followed her. As we were walking, she told me that it was dangerous to wander off like I had been. The woman led me towards the exit of McDonald's going outside. When we were just about at the doors, I got a really bad feeling. I hadn't really questioned this situation up until then, but I then realized that something had to be off. My mom hadn't even ordered yet, and we had been planning to eat inside the restaurant. So why would she have left? As we were crossing through the exit doors, I suddenly yanked my arm away from the woman. I broke off from her and then ran away through the crowd. I ran around in a panic, searching for my mom and sister like crazy. As I did, I went as far away from the woman as I could. At last, I found my mom and sister at the far left front counter about to order. When my mom saw me, she said, "There you are, it's time to order." She then ordered our food, and after getting it, we went and sat down. I didn't see the woman who tried to make me leave with her again. I also didn't tell my mom about it or anybody else. At the time, I was afraid if I told my mom that I would get in trouble or she would be upset. So I decided to just keep it to myself. But looking back, I know that I should have said something and that I wouldn't have gotten in trouble. The older I got, the more I realized how close I came to possibly getting kidnapped. After turning 16, I landed my first job at the local McDonald's. I was excited to finally have a job and earn some money. One quiet Monday night, I found myself working behind the counter with just my coworker. That night had been uneventful, and only a few customers had been there in the last hour. But as the time went by, eventually someone else came in. The man who walked through the door resembled a grown-up version of the eerie kid from the movie Vivarium. That's what I remember thinking, and he towered at an imposing height of probably 6'6". He was lengthy and tall, and he had a very pale complexion also. He was wearing a suit and tie with a black and white polka dot pattern. He seemed a little well-groomed for a late-night visit to McDonald's. For some reason, the guy just kind of freaked me out when I saw him. And unlike other customers, he bypassed the counter and went straight for a corner table. After sitting down at one, he took out a fork and spoon from his pocket, and a small plate as well. I was really weirded out by this. He then placed them on the table in front of him. I was trying not to just obviously stare at the guy, but I couldn't help but look. It was a bizarre sight, as if he'd come prepared for a meal, yet without any intention of ordering. I was noticing, though, that he kept looking over in my direction. This was pretty strange, and I decided to just ignore the guy. I went back to minding my own business and standing behind the counter. Soon, though, it was time to close up. I didn't really want to have to tell the guy that he had to leave. He seemed off, and I was nervous to approach him. I decided to go back and tell my coworker, hoping maybe he would rather tell the guy to leave. After talking with him in the back for maybe 30 seconds, we came out to see that the man was now gone. I hadn't heard him leave, but he was nowhere in the restaurant. We checked all around, even in the bathrooms and everything. I was so relieved, and we went on with closing up the place. The rest of the night, I drove home from work, got to my apartment, and got ready for bed. It was late, and I was really tired. But as I laid awake in bed, I glanced out my window and couldn't believe my eyes. The same tall, creepy man was walking down the sidewalk. I sat up in disbelief. As he walked by, he stopped and stared, looking right at me. I got up quickly and sprinted over to the window to close the blinds. My heart was now racing, and I was breathing heavy. I took a few moments to catch my breath and calm down. I had no idea why this creepy guy was walking right in front of my building. After a few moments, I'd opened the blinds slightly to look. I saw him walking off far away in the distance. I kept my blinds closed and went back to bed. I still think about this all the time. Maybe it was a coincidence that he happened to be walking by, but it sent shivers down my spine, especially when he looked at me. This happened not too long ago. After a long day at work, I was driving home and starving hungry. I stopped at a McDonald's because it was just about the only place still open. After getting there, I decided to park in the parking lot and go inside to order. The drive-through line was sort of long, and I thought it might be faster to just order inside. When I got inside the building, nobody else was in there other than employees. One employee stood behind the counter, and I walked up and ordered. After ordering, the employee went into the back and told me that they would be out with my order shortly. I then stood there, getting hungrier and hungrier by the second. As I waited, I glanced around the empty restaurant. That's when I noticed what appeared to be two men. They were not inside the restaurant exactly, but in the space between the first doors you walk in and then the second set of doors. The thing that really caught my attention, though, was that they were wearing masks. The masks looked like they were possibly from some movie or something, but they were really creepy. The guys just stood there inside. I looked away and continued to wait for my order. Probably about a minute later, the door opened and I saw the two men walking in. They made their way immediately to the left and inside the seating area of the restaurant. Then they went out of sight. The fact that they were not going up to order, but almost going to hide, was kind of concerning to me. Could they be planning to rob the place or something? That's what went through my head at first, but I quickly pushed that thought away. No way, I told myself. I stood there waiting for probably 2 more minutes. Then a McDonald's employee emerged from the back with my bag. I took it, and in that moment, considered letting the employee know about the men in masks who had gone inside, but ultimately, I decided not to. I walked away and left the restaurant. I did wonder, though, who those guys were and what they were doing. I was second-guessing myself the whole way as I walked out to my car in the parking lot. Maybe I should have said something. But as I was reaching my vehicle, I heard a noise behind me. I turned around as I was just a couple of feet away from my car door. When I did, I saw both of the two men running at me in a full sprint. They had just left the building, and there was no question that they were headed straight for me. I quickly unlocked my car, opened the door, and jumped inside of it. I hit the lock button, and the guys reached my car in less than 5 seconds. They tried opening my doors, and then started aggressively banging on my windows. I did the obvious thing, which was to back up and drive away. The men both kept hitting and kicking at my car as I did. Then they ran off to the far side of the McDonald's building. I got out of there as quickly as I could and then called the police when I was safely on the road. I'm sure the men probably ran off before the police got them, but I hope they were able to find them. Apparently, the men had targeted me. I'm not sure if that was their plan the entire time, if maybe they'd been watching me, waiting for me to go in, or maybe they just decided to after seeing me inside. Who knows? What I do know is I'm really glad that I'm okay.